Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror film from the United States, English language, released in the year 2018, directed by Johannes Roberts, and this film is called Strangers Prey at Night. So Strangers Prey at Night is a continuation of the first film, The Strangers, and this movie you've got a young family, a husband, wife, a teenage son and teenage daughter. The teenage daughter is very difficult, so the parents have tried every single avenue in order to try and turn this girl's life around, but they've been forced to now send her to a boarding school, and so she's really upset about this. She believes that the family don't love her anymore, so they're trying to come to grips and trying to stay unified, but it's very, very difficult. So they want one more night as a family before they actually arrive to this boarding school, so they stop over at the uncle's caravan park. Now, the uncle runs this caravan park, but he's not here on this evening. So when they get to the caravan that they're staying at, there's a note by this uncle saying that he'll see them in the morning, so they don't think anything else of it. So they're trying to play cards, they're trying to talk, but there is a lot of bitterness within this close-knit family. But unfortunately, that's the least of their problems, because they realise that they are prey to three psychopaths who are basically using this caravan park as a hunting ground. So in order to survive this onslaught, the family are going to have to try and get the identities of these killers and try and find out somehow how to stop these people and prevent themselves from becoming the next victim. So whether or not they can is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on Strangers Prey at Night. I was actually excited for this film for two reasons. Number one, I'm a massive fan of the first Strangers film. I think that's an expert exercise in suspense. It reminded me of French horror films, and it was everything that I wanted from a movie. It didn't rely on its violence, it didn't rely on jump scares, it was just really slow burn tension. The eeriness that just absorbs the screen, and I've just reviewed it, so if you want to know my thoughts on the first film, please go and see it. But I just think it's one of my favourite recent horror films, and so to know that this is going to be an addition to that movie, I thought, okay, well, what else are they going to bring to the table? And number two, the second reason why I was excited is because I'm a fan of Johannes Roberts. Now, a lot of people don't like him. A lot of people hated his British film called F. I actually personally loved it. I thought that was a very complex film. It was actually symbolising a lot of things, and so it's a lot more intelligent than a lot of people give it credit for. And so that was definitely an underrated film, and that really got me, it got me into Johannes Roberts' works. And so he's made 47 Metres Down. He's made a whole host of other films, Storage, which is another British movie. So he's definitely hit and miss, and so for me, I don't love the guy's work, but I'm a fan of it, and is that I'm slowly coming to terms with who this guy is as a director. And so both of those reasons are the reasons why this movie really should have worked. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, you ask yourself the question, why was The Strangers Prey at Night made? And the simple answer is for a cash grab, and that's all I can say. And that's very disappointing to say that, because as I said, I'm a fan of this director, but unfortunately he doesn't create anything new to the Strangers saga. This is a movie that repeats all the good things that the first film had going for it, and it just becomes a very disposable horror film. It was a very generic horror film, and it was a horror film that I checked out well before the end. And it does hurt me to say that, because I thought that if it was actually snowballing into something greater, I thought, the three villains in the first film were absolutely fantastic, and the villains are present in this movie, but there's no real addition to these characters. There's not really anything to suggest that they are larger than life, that they are larger than just 2D cardboard cutouts. They're just mindless killing machines. I thought it was an opportunity to create something of a little bit of depth, maybe give you a bit of an insight into who these people were and kind of humanize them. At the moment, they just feel like Friday the 13th, Jason or Michael Myers, just nothing behind the mask. It's just a killing machine. And so I was very disappointed in that aspect. But putting the negatives aside for 1 minute, I will say, production-wise, it is very good, and that's something you'd expect from Johannes Roberts. This guy really has a keen eye for creating an atmosphere, and the atmosphere was actually quite creepy. I really liked the setting of the caravan park. The majority of this film, if not the whole film, takes place at night, and I thought the use of dark colouring was actually very good, is because it does use your imagination a little bit. I thought that the acting was decent, although the script doesn't really work. The movie doesn't really attempt to give you an insight into these characters. As I said, it's more about situational horror, which is something I talked about in the first Strangers film, but unfortunately, the situational horror in this movie just doesn't work, because it always feels like deja vu. It's got a very good soundtrack, a very 80s feel of the soundtrack. It's got some neon lighting, so it actually feels like a 1980s film, so it's a homage to movies that have come before it, so that was good. And there were the set pieces that were actually quite gruesome, which once again is something that Johannes Roberts does fairly well. But unfortunately, that's where the positives end and the negatives start, is that this is a movie that just doesn't continue anything and make anything greater. This is a movie that borrows a lot of the good things that that the first Strangers had. Case in point, there's a scene in the first Strangers where a mysterious girl knocks on the door, and when they answer it, she asks if someone's home, and they say, no, you've got the wrong house, and she just mysteriously walks off. And I thought that was one of the creepiest moments in the first film, but Johannes Roberts uses it in this movie, and yes, it is effective and creepy, but unfortunately, I just thought to myself, this has been done before, and I was constantly saying that to myself, and after a while, I thought, okay, well, this is a director who's using this idea that has been very popular in the past, and he's trying to cash in off it. But if you want something that's going to continue the lore of the Strangers, then you're not going to get it. I just thought that this was a really predictable kind of horror film. Right at the end of the movie, it has a very predictable and very cliched sort of ending, which I really didn't like. I thought that the characters were just non-existent. I didn't really like them, and so the characters in this film needed to be a lot better, because the situational horror doesn't work as well once you've seen it all before. And so there is a level of generic quality to The Strangers Prey at Night, and it does hurt me to say, because as I said, I'm a fan of Johannes Roberts, but I'm just not a fan of this movie, because I thought to myself, it didn't need to be made. And it's just an indication that Johannes Roberts was just recycling successful material. And I always like when directors put their neck out on the line. They put their neck on the chopping block and they say that I'm going to take risks. If those risks work, great, but if the risks don't, then I'm going to wear it. But unfortunately, the bravery is non-existent in this movie. It's not trying to create a shadow of its own, and it just feels like it's scared to come out of the confines of the safety that the movie has. And so it's just a very disposable horror film. It's not a horror film that I'm going to be recommending. So overall for this movie, I'm going to give it 1.5 stars. Don't worry about seeing it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later.